Welcome back to the webcast All Sports One Web. It is Friday, January 19th. Tomorrow kicks off the NFL Divisional Playoff round, two games on Sunday. We are going to go through each one of those games and give you our picks in today's episode. But I hope you all enjoyed last week's AFC, NFC wildcard matchups that saw CJ Stroud, Jordan Love get their first playoff victories, that saw Kansas City and Buffalo both taking care of business at home as they will now face off against each other at Orchard Park this weekend, and Detroit hanging on with a little bit of the help from the referees against Matthew Stafford and that LA Rams team in Detroit. But let's go ahead and dive in with welcoming back San Francisco to the NFL playoff picture. They have been off. They will take on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers this week at home in San Francisco. And Brock Purdy hasn't thrown a pass in 3 weeks, a competitive pass in 3 weeks. How will he fare? Can Jordan Love keep this train rolling? We saw last week against Dallas that emphatic start that just got out to 27, ballooned out to 27-0 in that first half and kind of put that game away early. That offense was able to strike quick and often, explosive plays, plus that run game of Aaron Jones, who looks fully healthy, was absolutely fantastic, and they just dismantled Dallas. San Francisco is going to pose a completely different test, a top 3 rush defense, which means that if Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers want to keep their playoff train rolling, it means they're going to need to get those chunk plays, attack that San Francisco secondary with their great wide receivers who can all run down the sideline, down the middle, and push up the field. Maybe if they can do that and then allow Aaron Jones to get, out of the backfield, whether that's just some pitches or some dump downs, and try and attack that space of the San Francisco defense, maybe they can get some points. But I think this all will revolve around Christian McCaffrey. 3 weeks of rest for him is going to do wonders. And I think San Francisco is going to be able to methodically move down the field against this Green Bay defense. I think we were enamored by that 27-0 start against Dallas that we didn't realize Dallas then came all the way back and scored 32 points to get back into that game. If Dallas didn't throw that pick six and didn't have, could have gotten any points on the board there early, this would have been a great game late. That Green Bay defense is still something that isn't something to write home about. San Francisco is going to take advantage of that, and I think they will be just too much for Green Bay, but I am excited to see how Jordan Love handles everything there in Santa Clara. And now we'll move on to Tampa Bay with a great win against Philadelphia, and Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin throwing it all over the place against that Eagles secondary that we know isn't very good. They travel to Detroit now, and Detroit gets their second playoff game at home. So excited for the first time in over 30 years. That building was absolutely electric, and they get another one to get to the NFC Championship game. So the fans are going to be buzzing there. Now, what do Detroit, Washington, Philadelphia, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Cincinnati Bengals all have in common? It is that they are all the top 5 worst pass defenses in the regular season this year. We saw what Baker Mayfield was able to do to that secondary of Philadelphia this time out. Yes, that Philadelphia team had some issues. They did not look put together. They've slid the second half of the season like we have never seen a good NFL team do. So many consecutive losses to bad teams. But Baker Mayfield, that offense, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans are still no joke. They can get at this secondary for the Detroit Lions. We will see if Baker can escape Aiden Hutchinson in this game and extend plays, allow his wide receivers to go down the field and make things happen. I think Detroit will still be too much for them. But again, Tampa Bay and Green Bay kind of have that similar style or the similar path forward, and they have to execute it extremely well in order to get this win. For example, when you have Nick Mullins who throws for over 400 yards against your defense, it can get got. Baker Mayfield definitely can sling it against this Detroit Lions defense, but it's just, will it be enough to get a win. I don't think it will. Give me Detroit at home. And we move on over to the AFC side of things. CJ Stroud getting his first playoff win last week in his rookie season, his first start in the playoffs against a good Browns team. And Lamar Jackson, another bye, but we haven't seen a healthy Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs since 2020. 2018, 2019, 2020, they made the playoffs 3 consecutive years, but haven't made it with a healthy Lamar Jackson since then. And this game is one of a young team trying to see what they can accomplish and a team who historically has not played well in the playoffs. 2018, 2019, 2020. Baltimore Ravens haven't had a halftime lead in any of those playoff games. They lose to the Chargers in a game where the people were considering whether or not to bench Lamar Jackson and bring Joe Flacco back into the fold. Go to 2019, first seeded Baltimore Ravens on a bye, take on the Tennessee Titans and absolutely get blown out. They then get a revenge game 2020 against Tennessee. They get the win, but then they go to Buffalo and get blown out. Lamar Jackson, in his 1-3 playoff record, has 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, and has been sacked 19 times. That is an average of over 4 sacks per game. Put that in perspective, Patrick Mahomes averages about 2 sacks per game. I get trying to extend plays. I get trying to make things happen. But in playoff games, you need field position, and you cannot turn the ball over. We made that mistake by picking Cleveland against Houston last week. We thought those turnovers wouldn't result in really anything too detrimental. It turned out to be 2 pick sixes and really put that game out of hand for the Cleveland Browns. And so I will not be making that same mistake. Lamar Jackson has not shown me that he can play well in the playoffs. And what other team do we know of that has shown consistently that they cannot play well in the playoffs? That is the Dallas Cowboys. And what did they go on and do? They went and lost to the Green Bay Packers while being close to double-digit favorites at home. We know that Dallas has played well at home all year. We expected them to go ahead and continue that against a suspect Green Bay defense. They did not. They didn't show up. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens had no playoff halftime leads. So that is going to be the key for me in this game. Can Houston get off to a quick and early start? Can Nico Collins get those chunk plays? One of the main things we said last week when doing the Houston-Cleveland game was, can Houston get those chunk plays? Can they get those yards after catch? Can they get those quick slants that end up going for 50, 60 yards? And we thought that the Cleveland Browns defense was going to show up, tackle well, and not allow it. And that just was not the case. The motion, the plays that Houston were able to run, confuse the defense, were fantastic, and they got their players, their skill players, the ball in their hands and allowed them to go to work. I think they're going to follow that same plan. They're going to take that momentum in to a team that has been sitting for 3 weeks and have not started well in the playoffs historically, and get out to a lead that Baltimore will struggle to come back and take over. Give me Houston to go into Baltimore and get the win there. Kansas City versus Buffalo. Now, this game is definitely the game of the weekend, and so I have been poring over the statistics and the history here, so let's go through a little bit of that. You have a 10-degree with wind chill expected forecast for this game, so it's going to be kind of cold. So if we go back historically and look at cold weather playoff games, you had 2 this year already. Buffalo taking down Pittsburgh, Kansas City taking down the Miami Dolphins in one of the coldest games in NFL history, playoffs or not. And both teams, their reason for success was their ability to run the football. We saw Josh Allen go for a 50-plus yard touchdown to push that game away. Isaiah Pacheco leading the line there for Kansas City. You go back even further than that, 2016, the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson getting a great win in the playoffs using Russell Wilson's leg. Eli Manning versus Brett Favre in 2008 NFC Championship game. Eli Manning running for 32 yards and kind of helping extend drives, getting the Giants a crucial victory there. 1997 NFC Championship game as well. The team that ran the ball better won. 2004 Patriots were able to run the ball against Tennessee. Slight edge there, but a victory nonetheless in the 2004 AFC Championship game, or I think divisional round in that one. But anyway, historically, who runs the ball better in cold weather gets the win in the playoffs. And for me, Isaiah Pacheco didn't play in that first game against Buffalo. He will lead the line for the Kansas City Chiefs this time around. But I have to give the edge to Josh Allen's ability and mobility in this one, especially when you add in that over the last 8 weeks since Ken Dorsey left in the middle of November, this team has pushed more towards the run game and towards designed runs for Josh Allen. They are relying more on his physical ability than his arm talent, who sometimes he gets a little bit ahead of himself. So that edge, I will go to Buffalo. Now, you look at historically teams in the playoffs teams look historically at teams who have and playing against playoff caliber teams, right? So Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff game. So what is the closest thing that we can look at? Well, we can look at Patrick Mahomes' record away from home in the regular season against teams that did make the playoffs. There was one this year. They lost to Green Bay. You go back to 2021, there's been 8 such games. Kansas City is 4-4 in those games. That is not the 13-2 or 3 record that Patrick Mahomes has in the playoffs altogether. That's not even close. So you see the drop off significantly when they're playing playoff caliber teams away from home. It has not been good. You add on top of that Buffalo have won 2 of the last 2 meetings between these 2 teams and haven't had a home game against Kansas City in 4 years now. They're going to be biting at the bit. So you look at that, I'm going to lean towards Buffalo in that. So there you go. Two historical matchups that lean Buffalo. But Kansas City doesn't care about that. They've never cared about that. The last time that Kansas City had a losing record against playoff caliber teams, 2019, they won the Super Bowl. They played the whole regular season. They only won 1 or 2 games against playoff caliber teams. Then they won 3 straight to win the Super Bowl. Historically, Kansas City has never been the team that really leaned on the rushing game with Patrick Mahomes at the helm and won football games, especially big football games. In the 2 playoff games between Kansas City and Buffalo, it is split. Kansas City led the rushing in one game and lost the rushing total in another game. Kansas City has won both games. Kansas City does not adhere to these historical playoff records, and they just figure out ways to win in December, January, and February. So my head is telling me Buffalo. Everything in this game is telling me Buffalo. My heart is telling me Kansas City is going to find a way to pull this off somehow. Now, the injuries to Terrell Bernard definitely is playing as well. A linebacker with a bum ankle isn't something that you want in a cold weather game. Being able to move side to side and having to stop the run game is going to be quite difficult. We'll see how he fares. I don't think he practiced yesterday on Thursday. We'll see if he can go and how good he looks on a shorter week for Buffalo since their game against Pittsburgh was pushed to last Monday. So I'm going to go Buffalo with this one. It's going to be close. I'm super excited for it, but I will go Buffalo. And something in me just says Kansas City, despite all of this stuff, is going to pull it off. But I am going Buffalo. I am sticking with Buffalo. We had them last week making the Super Bowl against San Francisco. I think that trend will still continue. Give me Buffalo, Houston, Detroit, and San Francisco to make the championship games after this weekend. Enjoy the slate of games, and that'll do it from us at the webcast. We will see you next time.